This will be a more detailed update with regards to Anthony Joshua and the sad events concerning the passing of his two friends. Basically, yeah, obviously more has come out and I've seen more. I have unfortunately seen the other footage regarding this tragedy, and yeah, it's not very good. It's not very good. So let me, without further ado, go into this. Keep it as succinct and brief as possible. Basically, as we know, Anthony Joshua was involved in an unfortunate car accident in Nigeria. I'm going to try and put the diagram of the car where it hit the truck. Apparently, it's believed many different stories come out believing that basically the car was overtaking and suddenly maybe lost control. It crashed into the lorry, and unfortunately, on the passenger side, both the guy in front and first the guy in front next to the driver and the person behind were unfortunately unalived. So let me start by saying rest in peace to Sina, Ghami, and his personal trainer Latif Ayodele, who is extremely popular online. Obviously has a weight training site page, and Lats, as he's known as, is extremely, as with Sina, is extremely respected, and that is shown by the outpouring of grief that I've seen on various pages and people who know him indirectly. So without further ado, let me say rest in peace there. And yeah, as I said, I've unfortunately seen the footage, and to be honest with you, from what I've read of these two guys that have sadly passed, I don't think they deserve that. And this is me speaking now. I do not think they deserved. And also, I've seen other footage of them, you know, because these guys travel Nigeria often. And I've seen other footage of those guys out and about on their travels, going to Nigeria, enjoying themselves, being free-spirited, bigging up the country. And to see that, you know, from what I saw, the two bodies on the floor, no. From what I'm seeing, and the outpouring of grief, and the respect that those guys commanded, and respect levels they garnered and generated because they were such nice guys, they don't deserve that. You know, disrespectful. People talk about lack of resources, lack of infrastructure in Nigeria. Sorry. It seems there was a lack of respect as well. And no, I'm not coming at Nigerians, because as I said before in the last video, and I'm actually going to do another video after this, touching on this maybe, with a different angle on it. But let me just say that, you know, respect and dignity is something that, you know, has no price. You know, it seems to me that the car may have crashed and they were pulled out of the car and just left there like that. I'm sorry, no. And I'll say more on this in the next video, but it seems to me that the country may lack money in many aspects, but there's no lack of money when it comes to having a phone, okay? Because there's very different angles and these are well shot videos on phones. So yeah, you may lack infrastructure, but when it comes to a phone, yeah, you're probably doing better than me. And I find it very disrespectful. But hey, let me just keep it monotone, as it were. Now, another thing that's got my attention is that, you know, there's a lot of conspiracy theories regarding this. Not conspiracy reality, which is, you know, something that I would deal with. At the moment, it's conspiracy theories. I'm hearing the name Jake Paul come up all the time in this. You know, people are talking about, about mysterious numbers and Jake Paul, and obviously AJ didn't read the script. So because he did not read the script, then, boy, this happened. Oh, how can this happen so soon after such a big fight? How can this happen so soon after his stock value has gone through the roof? Nearly £1 billion, and now this happens. People are saying, this can't be a coincidence. This can't be a coincidence. Something may have happened. People are talking about Illuminati and things like that. Well, it seems to me what's more feasible is they're driving at speed on roads which really shouldn't be driven on. And then I'll stick a pin here right now. I'm not coming at Nigerian. Listen, I'm in the Nigerian community over here, and they go back and forth arguing the same thing. Okay, which I'm going to touch on in the next video. Okay, I'm not going to drag it out. I was going to be very succinct dealing with that. Okay, but I think that's what's happened here. Okay, and it may be that. Okay, another angle, which is also an element of realism, is that it may be that there's some bad-minded people who were observing and did something to the car. You don't know. Because a lot of... Let me just leave it there. But a lot of people, bush people we call them, which, a lot of bush people, Nigeria, Jamaica, my own country, home country, Africa, Colombia, we call them bushmans, yeah? They have a certain way, a certain mentality, and when they're red eye, nothing's stopping them. So maybe, just maybe, there might be some envy there. They did something to the car. We don't know. But hey, keep it on track as it stands. The roads there are horrendous, and it seems that if you are driving at speed on those roads, then boy, there's something else. That's something else. You know what I mean? But hey, but anyway, yeah, I mean. Another main concern is how does AJ come back from this? Because to be honest, if that was me, boy, that's going to be something else. I mean, some other videos that I've listened to have quite rightly mentioned things like SD. Obviously, there's going to be, aspects of mental health, survivor's guilt. Let's not forget that, And from what I've read, some of his injuries are far worse than originally feared. From what I'm reading, some of his injuries they're saying, they can be pretty bad, and that may stem from the fact of it may actually stem from the way he was pulled out of the car himself, because Nigeria, if we look at the response, there's no ambulance. They didn't use the right techniques, so there could be if there's any internal damage, that could be worsened by how he was taken out of the car. Because let's not forget, he was taken out of the car, then put into another car. He wasn't laid down, there was no precautions taken. And these things can minimize damage as well as long-term damage. So there is a lot to look at there. Okay? I mean, I read somewhere, I heard somewhere, someone made a good point comparing this kind of thing to the previous boxer, Errol Spence, who had a very, very, very horrific car accident. And, he came back unscathed, but, it's questionable if he was the same again when he came back, But that's another conversation. Well, I think, what's probably going to happen now is, I'm going to say this, yeah, and a big rest in peace to Sina and Lats, his friends, and, not to downplay that, because, as I said, very popular guys and very respected, not just in the boxing world, but outside, yeah. There's always going to be people saying, imagine if AJ was to have been sadly, as well, okay? that's the case, that'd be horrific, horrendous. That'd be awful as well. Equally as bad, obviously. You know, but no buts, but well, equally bad. However, the media would be jumping on that, and you know, people would be saying Nigeria. They'll be jumping on that because, you know, jumping on that in the aspect of in his development. And I say that to say this: AJ, wealthy guy, but in that moment in time, he was as equally poor as any other Nigerian. There's no difference. When I say that, I mean the poorest Nigerian in that country. You're equal footing, you know, and that's scary, man. And I don't mean in a bad way, but you know, at least in the UK, we have free NHS. So if car hits a wall, the ambulance is there in seconds, and right precautions are taken. So technically speaking, in a life or death situation, the probability of life increases dramatically because of the response and because of the treatment. Whereas here, boy, I don't know. I think it's the other way around. In the aspects of life or death, the death element has to go higher because the response is going to be poor and the treatment's going to be poor. You know? And opportunists, and you're going to get opportunists, yeah, or in this case, it might even be opportunists now. Some people may have a realistic concern and say, guess what, you know, this country needs to sort itself out. But hey, that's something that needs to be looked at. But as it stands, no. Rest in peace, Sina. That's how it's properly pronounced, sorry. Sina Ghami, rest in peace. And to his personal trainer, Latif. Both guys come over brilliantly, and you know, it's respect to what I'm getting hearing online and seeing. Not a bad word said. And you can tell that they know whether they carry themselves that these were some real A1 guys. Again, rest in peace. Alright then, later.